Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on climate adaptation options. This is a joint CMCC EEA webinar, and I'm very pleased to give some introductory words on the CMCC Foundation, and specifically on the project that I coordinate, in which framework we are contributing to the content update and further development of Climate-ADAPT. I'm Silvia Medri, and I'm a scientific manager at the CMCC Foundation. First of all, CMCC stands for Centro Euro-Mediterraneo sui cambiamenti climatici. This is an Italian research institute, a no-profit foundation, aiming to investigate and model our climate system and its interactions with society to provide timely, reliable and scientific sound results in support of sustainable development, environment protections, and to develop science for climate change adaptation and mitigation policies at a national and international level. CMCC is built in form of a network distributed throughout the Italian country, and we are working in topical research divisions spanning from climate simulations and predictions, risk assessment and adaptation strategies, impacts of climate change on agriculture, forests and ecosystem services, ocean modeling and data simulations, regional modeling, economy, economic analysis of climate impacts and policy. And we are focusing on a range of topics, including energy, water, global policy, inequalities, cities, and the future Earth. The CMCC Foundation is very active in disseminating the results of the research we produce, including through a range of publication in peer-reviewed journals, communication, including through social media. We organize and participate in a range of international, national, and also local events. And we also have education courses for PhD on climate science and related issues. Since 2011, the CMCC Foundation is coordinating the European Topic Center on Climate Change Impacts, Vulnerability and Adaptation, shortly ETC-CCA, under framework partnership agreement with the European Environment Agency. The next speaker will introduce the European Environment Agency and Climate-ADAPT. So I'd like to just give a few words now on this initiative, in which framework we are working on Climate-ADAPT, among other things. So what the ETC-CCA is? It's a consortium of 15 partners from 10 European countries led by the CMCC Foundation, bringing together our expertise on climate change impact, vulnerability and adaptation and disaster risk reduction topics. And our major role is to assist the European Environment Agency in supporting and informing policy development and implementation at the EU level and at the country level. with the main supported policy process being the EU climate change adaptation strategy. So I think that it is very timely that we have this webinar now, given that last week the European Commission, DG Clima, published the blueprint for a new and more ambitious EU climate change adaptation strategy, which is now open for consultation. And we provided background information for that. An example of what we do in this framework. We contribute to a range of thematic and assessment EEA reports, for example, on climate change impacts in Europe. We work on the synergies between climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, exploring, for example, this year, the nature-based solutions that are very high on the policy agenda and mentioned several times also in the EU Green Deal. We develop and keep updated climate change impacts and vulnerability indicators. We are also working on monitoring and evaluation of adaptation policies at the national level, including through indicators. And all of this information is targeted to policymakers and decision makers at the European level and at the national level in Europe. All of this information is shared through Climate-ADAPT, the European Climate Adaptation Platform. And this will be described in detail by José Ramon Picatoste, who is the next speaker. Before giving the floor to José Ramon, I'd like to recall that even if we are a lot, all the participants have the possibility to make questions by typing them in the chat. And at the end of the webinar, the moderator will pick up some questions and distribute them to the relevant speakers. Please note that the webinar will be recorded and posted on the CMCC website and YouTube channel, so you will have the opportunity to relook at it. As I've said, this is a webinar in a series of CMCC, and the next one will be on the typhoon in the maritime continent, which is also a very relevant topic, considering the importance of climate extremes that we have observed recently. And the speaker will be our colleague Enrico Scocimaro, who is an international expert on hurricanes, including medicines and climate extremes. So now I'm giving the floor to José Ramon Picatoste. Just a second for that. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Silvia. Good morning, participants, to this 7th webinar, Climate-ADAPT webinar, this time focused on the adaptation options of Climate-ADAPT. I hope you can see my screen. I'm going to maximize it. Let's see. Okay, this is, as I mentioned, the 7th Climate-ADAPT webinar. We usually organize 2 webinars per year. And this is the agenda for the webinar. Very briefly, after the welcome from Silvia Medri, CMCC, I will provide a brief introductions on the European adaptation platform Climate-ADAPT. Then we will follow with a presentation on the catalog of adaptation options in the platform by Emiliano Ramieri. Then we will move to a presentation given by Spyridoula Ntemiri from Greece. She will show us an example of how Climate-ADAPT adaptation options are used in Europe. And finally, we will have these question and answer sessions. So please, I invite you to provide and to put your questions using the chat functions of this tool. Okay, so let's move to the introduction of the Climate-ADAPT platform. First of all, which is the policy relevant of Climate-ADAPT? Well, you know, we have an European Union adaptation strategy adopted in 2013, and Climate-ADAPT is explicitly mentioned and included in this strategy as a tool with the aim to support better informed decision making in Europe. Climate-ADAPT is included in Action 5 of this adaptation strategy as the one-stop shop for adaptation information in Europe. So it has a high policy relevance, and it has a political mandate, the platform. The platform is a partnership between the European Commission, DG Clima, and the European Environment Agency. Climate-ADAPT is regularly maintained by the agency with the support of the European Topic Center on Climate Change Impacts, Vulnerability and Adaptation. So how is organized the information in the platform? Well, it has several main entry points that includes block sections on EU policies, and there we have comprehensive information on the adaptation policies in Europe, and the sectoral policies, information on all those sectors that are vulnerable and sensible to climate change. Then we have also a main block on countries, transnational regions and cities, and here we have, for example, the so-called country pages, with information coming from countries and following a formal reporting scheme for it. Then Climate-ADAPT has also a main block under the name Knowledge, and there we have information on relevant topics on adaptation, for example, how to deal with the uncertainties, how to, what are the main frameworks for assessment, vulnerability and risk. We have information on data and indicators, research projects, practice, meaning examples of implementation actions in Europe, and tools. And then we have the database. The database in Climate-ADAPT has so far more than 2,000 items, collecting all relevant information and organized in a very structured way. Just to show you some figures on the statistic of Climate-ADAPT, during last year, 2019, we had more than 240,000 visits and a number of page views around 450,000 page views. Talking a bit about the database in Climate-ADAPT is a structure following some categories of information. We have items, for example, of different typology, research and knowledge projects, tools, videos, indicators, portals, organization, publication and report. And we have specific type of items that it as adaptation options. That is the focus of this webinar. So Emiliano will provide full details of how we manage these adaptation options in Climate-ADAPT. We have also case studies that are examples of implementation actions in Europe, and as we will see, case studies and adaptation options are closely linked. Maybe mention that the database has other filters that allow users to search the database according to the interest, using these filters by sectors, by countries, by typology of data, by impacts of climate change, and so on. So I will finalize this intro with some information on our current and future planning for the Climate-ADAPT development. We are currently working to develop an interface from Copernicus Climate Change Service into Climate-ADAPT in order to allow users to get products regarding climate services according to their interest. This is currently in progress, this work. We are also working to develop a health and climate change virtual observatory to be an integral part of Climate-ADAPT. We are adjusting the country pages according to the new regulation on reporting under the governance of Energy Union and Climate Actions. We are also improving the adaptation support tool, a component in Climate-ADAPT that provide guidance to different levels to develop adaptation strategies. We are also working on some IT contracts with the aim to improve different IT components in Climate-ADAPT, including the search engine, and considering different options to visualize the results of the queries. And we are also working with the aim to interconnect Climate-ADAPT with other platforms at European and at national level also. So with these introductions, I invite Emiliano Ramieri from Thetis to take the floor and provide his presentation on the catalog of adaptation options. I will transfer the role to him to allow him to present, to share his screen. Let's see. Wait a moment. Please, Emiliano, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Meanwhile, I'm opening the presentation. I will say a few words on myself. Yes, my name is Emiliano Ramieri, and I work in Thetis, which is a consultancy based in Venice, in Italy. And I'm part of the CCA since 2011. So since we began with this consortium, our venture in the CCA, and within Climate-ADAPT, I'm responsible for the coordination of the development of the two items, which have been mentioned before by José, specifically the adaptation options and case studies. We will talk about adaptation options today, but we'll even touch briefly the case study issue. What are adaptation options in Climate-ADAPT? They are meant as measures and actions that can be designed and concretely implemented on the ground to reduce vulnerability and improve adaptation to both current climate extremes or climate variability and the long-term climate change. It's very important that in our consideration, adaptation options have a long-term vision. This is to say that we are very much interested to anything which is already coping with the variability of the climate system, but it's very important that the measures we are dealing with also take into consideration the medium long-term changes in the climate system. And the Climate-ADAPT provides a catalog of potential options. When developing these options, we always have to a little bit make a sort of balance between being too detailed in the description of options or too general. So coming to a solution in the middle. So each of the options indeed includes the description of more measures, which refer to an overall category of possible measures that approach some of the climate hazards. But this will be a little bit more clear during my presentation. There are basically two entry points into Climate-ADAPT from which you can have access to the adaptation options. One is from the section called Knowledge. Basically, there is a landing page which describes what our adaptation options are in Climate-ADAPT, and also provide you the possibility to have access to the adaptation options through a couple of filters you can see here in the slide. The climate impacts the adaptation options deal with, and the sectors which are covered by the adaptation options. The second possibility to browse the adaptation options is given by the database. As Jose mentioned, there is a database of items including more than 2,000 items, and 59 of them are adaptation options that can be filtered again by sectors and impacts, but even by other criteria. And of course, when you filter them, you can even open them and have access to the information which is included in Climate-ADAPT adaptation options. The 59 adaptation options can be categorized in different ways. As I said, they are tagged to sectors. A limited number of options can be defined as cross-sectors options, as they are tagged to all the sectors we have been considering in Climate-ADAPT. So they are rather cross-cutting options, like you can see here, capacity building on adaptation or awareness raising. Another number of options, 13, are tagged to more than 4 adaptation sectors, but not all of the adaptation sectors. So we have defined them multi-sectors adaptation options. For example, green space and corridors in urban areas, which is definitely linked to urban areas, but not only, is also linked to biodiversity, often is linked to water management and other elements or other sectors considering Climate-ADAPT. The majority of the options are sector specific. They're really focused on a limited number of sectors, which means less than 4. You can see here some of them, like beach nourishment, which is very much focused on one of the sectors, which is the one on coastal areas, or the heat health actions plan, which is very much focused on the health sector. And within Climate-ADAPT, we have categorized the options into soft, green, and gray. Green refers to any use of nature to improve adaptation capacity in a system, so making benefit from the functionalities that natural processes and ecosystem services provide. Gray obviously is pointing to technological engineering options, while soft refers to options which are related to policy, planning, or any kind of initiatives that trigger different behaviors into humans. There is another way that of categorization, which is considered by Climate-ADAPT, that one is by the IPCC assessment report. You can see here the distribution of options by this categorization, and you can see that there is a high number of options which are tagged for the category of structural engineering options, which are basically overlap with the gray measures we saw before. The same is for the technological options, but there is also a good number of ecosystem-based options. This is an example of an option. It's climate proofing of buildings against excessive heat, aiming to reduce the vulnerability of buildings to high temperature and heat waves. There is in each of the option a description of the option itself, which is the one shown here in the slide, which normally includes a number of hyperlinks to more detailed source of information. There are other information. There is other information which is provided below to the description on the importance of stakeholder engagement in designing and implementing the options, the cost and benefits of the option, success and limiting factor, the implementation time, and the lifetime, so the duration of the specific measures considered. And of course, there are also links to more detailed source of information. On the right side of the slide, I mean your left side, your right side of this slide, you can see also how the options are categorized. I mean, they are categorized by keywords, sectors, climate impacts, the governance level, so the level at which they are implemented. It can be local, subnational, national, or even transnational. Whether they are important for the global dimension of the world, or specific for Europe. And then there are also links to case studies, so example of concrete implementation of those adaptation options into the ground. But we'll come back to this with one example later on. We develop options based on a wide spectrum of source of information. We have been digging into other platforms. Here there is the example of the Natural Water Retention Measures platform, where we've been referring to specific website dealing with some specific aspect. In this case, for example, adaptation for the road transportation. We are, of course, taking information from report, as in this case, one of the reports of the European Environment Agency, or we also look at European on a sub or regional scale application, like in this case, metal alarm on a warning system for high temperature and heat waves. And surely we do refer to more recent project. This is the case of Climefish, which is just ending and which has produced a lot of information of adaptation in the sector of marine and fisheries. As you can see here, the options can be then analyzed in terms of data distribution by the sectors considered by Climate-ADAPT. We can say that there is a good coverage of all the sectors, with a partial exception of the financial sector. We can this is likely due to the fact that there are not many options which are available for the sector yet, and are still to be developed. But of course, we use this kind of analysis we do frequently every year to see where to focus more the next development of the catalog of adaptation options. And the same can be done for the impacts. And as you can see, there are mostly of the impacts which are well covered by the examples of options we have gathered in the catalog, from drought to extreme temperature, flooding, sea level rise, storms, and water scarcity. And again, here the exception is ice and snow related impacts. Similarly for what happened for the financial sector, we think that this is mainly due to the fact that there are very few applications on the ground of measures which are trying to deal with this quite complex impact. As I said, the adaptation options are linked to case studies, and the case studies provide concrete examples of how the options which are described here in general terms are put on the ground, implemented on the ground. So if we take again the example of climate proofing of buildings against excessive heat, We can see this is linked to 4 case studies. We can have a look at one of them. That's the case studies in Turin, in Italy, where an architect studio designed and then constructed a tree house to improve adaptation to high temperature heat waves within the building, and also to mitigate and reduce the greenhouse gases emission from the building. Similarly, still referring to the same example, another case study which is included in Climate-ADAPT is the one in Antwerp in Belgium, where a very detailed assessment of heat stress at the level of each of the building of the city was done to then come to a strategy and a plan to implement actions on the ground to deal with the heat stress and the urban island effect in the city of Antwerp. The ETCCCA and EEAI experts are deeply involved in developing adaptation actions. And actually, last year and this year, the catalog of options has been consistently enriched and reviewed. By the end of 2018, the catalog was including 40 options. Now it includes 59 options, and some of the older ones have been even revised. But of course, we're always looking very forward to anyone who would like to contribute to the catalog of options, and the same I would say is for case studies. So the process which any kind of user would like is asked to follow if he would like to submit an option is to prepare a short abstract, submit the abstract through the email contact which is available in Climate-ADAPT, and then based on the feedback he will receive, develop the description of the adaptation option with an offline template. Then there is a number of feedback cycles between anyone who is interested in submitting an option and the ETCCCA and EEA experts involved, coming then to a finalized versions which is formally approved by EA for publication. And I'd like to conclude saying that this is dynamic work. We keep constantly working on how to improve the catalog of options. And there are a number of issues that we consider in doing this work. Of course, we can reach again even more the catalog of adaptation options with new adaptation options, maybe focusing on the still remaining major gaps, the one related to the ice snow related impacts, and the other one to the financial sector. We can surely improve the links with case studies, providing other case studies or more focused case studies. We know that there are some options which still lack any examples of real implementation, as we don't have good case studies showing the implementation of these options. There are not many. There are 4 or 5 out of the full set of 59, but we would like to close this gap. There is a bunch of options which is still referred to 2015 in terms of included information that we would like to definitely update, and also checking whether there is any overlapping, and try to eliminate those kind of overlapping. And also exploring the way how to link to other catalogs of adaptation options and measures. These are this is my reference, my email. Of course, I'm very looking forward to the discussion later on, and you can definitely contact me for any kind of answer even later. And now I will pass the floor to Spyridoula. Here she is. Spyridoula, you are unmuted.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning from Greece. My name is Spyridoula Ntemiri. I work as a project manager on climate change issues at the Green Fund. And my task here today is to try to demonstrate how you can make use of the adaptation options component of the Climate-ADAPT for your own cases related to the impacts of climate change. Before I start, I would like to give you a few words about the Green Fund. It's a funding organization founded in 2010. It's being supervised by the Ministry of Environment and Energy, and its scope is to enhance development through environmental protection, to support the country's environmental policies, and to serve public and social interests through the management of its resources. Now, basically, the operation of the Green Funds is based on the management of different revenues coming either from fines from environmental offenses, related tax resources, or other revenues, and these are reinvested to the environment through funding programs that aim to the protection, enhancement, and restoration of natural and urban environment. In what follows, it is important to mention that the director of the Green Fund is one of the Greek national contact points for the LIFE program. For those of you who do not know it, a LIFE program is the EU's financial instrument for the environment and climate change. The Green Fund participates currently in 8 projects. One very important is the capacity building project, where we support potential beneficiaries in the submission of LIFE proposals. And we also participate in 3 integrated projects that are related to the national strategies for the environment. One of them is the LIFE IP AdaptInGR. The full title is Boosting the Implementation of Adaptation Policy Across Greece. We are 19 partners in this project, coming from national, regional, and local administration, as well as the academic community and the non-governmental organizations. With respect to the regional and local administration, there are 3 regions and 5 municipalities that are represented in the project, and that they are going to implement demonstrative actions. And at the same time, we have the Union of Greek Regions and the Central Union of Greek Municipalities as partners, and their task is to demonstrate and to support the exchange of knowledge through their network. The coordinator of the project is the Ministry of Environment and Energy. Now, such a project is quite complicated, so we have many actions. The ones I'm going to speak about most today are related to the shielding of the most vulnerable sectors, as well as the actions at the regional and local level. All the actions are closely linked to the Greek National Adaptation Strategy, as well as to the 13 regional adaptation plans. The role of the Green Fund has been twofold. First, during the proposal preparation, we participated in the discussions for choosing adaptation options for the regional and local demonstration projects. And now, during the project implementation, we are responsible for the coordination of capacity building activities, the monitoring of resources, and we also provide some more support in most actions, including for the implementation of the demonstrative projects. In this list, in this slide, you can see the full list of demonstration projects. Basically, they are 12. And the main sectors that they deal with is related to flood risk, forest fires, coastal risk management, sustainable water management, and urban planning and regeneration. Today, I'm going to speak about 4 of these projects. They are all implemented at the local level. Starting with the first case, we are in a municipality in Athens. It's called Anarchiri Kamatero, and this municipality has a particular area, Gerovuno, that is suffering from extreme flooding, especially in the case of storms. Actually, because it lacks the management of pluvial water system. At the same time, this area is really close to the Metropolitan Park of Adonis Trichis. It's a park, a quite big park of 1,200 acres. And this park suffers currently from severe water shortage. So going into the climate adaptation options, the sector would be urban, and the climate impact that is more related is flooding. And then we can get 27 results, including some of the ones you see in the screen. In our particular case, what we wanted to highlight and to use mostly is to check how we can integrate the stormwater management into the landscaping and using the ecological, visual, and social benefits that that a solution can provide. And in this sense, it seems that the water-sensitive urban and building design is more relevant for this particular case. The second case that I'm going to present is in Larissa. Larissa is a city in the center of the mainland of Greece. It really suffers from very high temperatures, and it has been suffering for some time now. There is also high activity in the city center, high concentration of services, and the climate projections indicate that there will be an increase in the heat waves frequency as well as in the number of warm days. The intervention area is planned to is a combination of schools actually, and it affects more than 1,200 students. Now, in the Climate-ADAPT platform, if we put the parameters, we get 7 results. Some of them are rather softer, so they refer to the consumer side adaptation options like changes in behavior. And some of them are mostly connected to the green spaces. And in our case, these are of more interest because the municipality is really interested in implementing a very participatory process in consulting with the local community, consulting with the students, with the pupils, with the teachers, as well as with the municipality that will be responsible for the maintenance of the space. And it seems that options that are related to the urban farming and gardening and the creation of green spaces would be more suitable for this case. Now, the third case is in Katerini. We are moving up a little bit higher in Greece. The problem is that in the city center, we have increased vehicle circulation. It's also a densely populated area with high building blocks. And all this creates quite good conditions for the urban heat island. Now, this municipality quite early has had a thermography run around the city center, so they are good in monitoring what they would like to do. In the Climate-ADAPT, I chose buildings and urban, and as impact extreme temperatures and also non-specific. And the results that we get are 9 results, again, some soft options, but the ones that are mostly connected with what the municipality would like to do is first the green spaces and corridors in the center. And this is because having the thermography, they know exactly where they would like to make their intervention. So part of this project will be to create a new space in this area and complement this network of corridors. But at the same time, they would like to try some more innovative systems, and they are planning to implement a smart information system in combination with a mobile application that can give to the population some indicators on temperature, real-time indicators on temperature and humidity, and depending on their vulnerability, suggest actions as well as places where they can find shelter in the municipality. The last case comes from the northern part of Greece. We are in Komotini, a municipality really up. And we are particularly interested in the municipal department of Aegiros in the south of this municipality. The main occupation of the residents is agriculture. It's also, the coastal part is also a Natura 2000 area. And there we have a problem with the water supply. The local water needs are covered by boreholes. But what happens, and it's quite a common problem in Greece, is that we have a resident population of about 500 people that in the summer is getting exploded and can get to up to 10 times higher. And this causes water pressure problems, cuts, and in addition, they have also noticed recently some water quality issues. So for this problem, again, the climate-adapt adaptation options sector would be water management, and the climate impact is water scarcity and droughts. We received 17 results. Some of them refer mostly to trying to regulate the uses of water, and some of them are mostly related to making intervention to improve the supply. But what was important to note is that the municipality thought that they were missing data. So actually their option was more on using telemetry to get some idea about the condition of the network, get some good images, good impressions about the water uses in the area, and then maybe try to experiment with the dynamic management of the supply as an immediate measure before going to a harder solution. Now, in this table, I have summed up some information that you can find in climate adaptation options on these cases. Basically, there are examples of what Emiliano was referring to before, so you can find the category of the measures, but you can also note down key aspects that will help you formulate your own solutions, will help you during the implementation to understand what you would really need to look at. And getting to the conclusions, Climate-ADAPT provides a good overview of different solutions, but this needs necessarily to be discussed with the local authorities and stakeholders. You need to get their insights, and in many cases, you need to take into account their wider vision. In many cases, a combination of measures may fit better the problem targeted, but at the same time, in particular funding tools, you need to take care of the budget, the time, and the maturity needed of the project. It's important to note that many solutions carry co-benefits, and you can get insights on this in the Climate-ADAPT platform. So maybe you are dealing with the climate change issues, but at the same time, you are connected to, your solution is connected and is bringing health benefits or biodiversity benefits, and this is good when you're exploring them. And last but not least, Climate-ADAPT also promotes the exchange of knowledge and dissemination of good cases. And I think this is quite important because maybe you hear this title that is a little bit general, but then each case comes with its own characteristics, and I think it's useful to learn from one another. With this, I come to the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you for your attention and also to thank the municipalities of Agia Nargiri and Kamatero, Larissa and Katerini, and the Municipal Water and Sewage Company of Komotini for providing me with the material and also for the useful discussions during this process. In case you have questions, I would be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spyridoula, for your presentation, and also to Emiliano. Now we enter in the question and answer session. I have to say that we have lots of questions and comments that we are going to try to address them, but there is so high number of questions that's difficult to address all of them in the time we have available. Let's start with some general questions on the availability of the presentations and if the webinar has been recorded. I have to say that yes, the webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded in both the CMCC website and also in Climate-ADAPT website in coming days. Let's see, there is several questions, I think, for you, Emiliano, around the criteria to select the adaptation options in Climate-ADAPT. Let's say the balance of the pool of adaptation options in terms of distributions among sectors. I think you have mentioned already something in your presentations. And then some questions on how the adaptation options are selected, which are the main source of this. If we let's say we take inspiration from research projects in Europe, or which is the source for the identification, if we test them before publishing Climate-ADAPT. Maybe you can start with this set of questions. Emiliano, please be as synthetic as you can.
Sure. Thanks for the questions. I think the main criteria we apply when we have been developing the catalog of adaptation options has been to try to cover as much as possible the different sectors in a balanced way, and also the different climate impacts that we're considering in a balanced way. This is, I would say, quite an easy. They are quite an easy applicable criteria. As I said at the beginning, we also try to find a good balance, avoiding to be too detailed or too general, which is indeed more tricky and is definitely quite subjective. We don't want to have in Climate-ADAPT too detailed options. I mean, pointing, I don't know, to breakwaters in a very specific way when we're dealing with coastal areas. But we don't want to be too general, which means not giving the proper information to the user. So till now, we've been working very much relying on the pool of experts provided by the EA and the CCCA. So every year we prepare a plan. Based on the plan, we decide what number of adaptation options we would like to develop. And we try to distribute these new options between the experts, which means among the different sectors. But in the recent time, we've been also start working quite closely with research projects. I mentioned, for example, Climate-Fish in my presentation. And this, I think, provides a good example of how we do work with them. They are on the front line of the research, in this case, on the specific field of adaptation options in the marine and fishery sectors. So we've been discussing with them their advancement in the research and the latest results, and came to the conclusion that a couple of options could be developed from the results of the project. One dealing with the diversification of aquaculture, and another one with climate change adaptation in the fishery sector. So we co-developed together with this project the two options which are now in Climate-ADAPT. This is, in my view, the work we should try to do more and more in the next years to really scan the latest projects which are producing new evidence and new ideas for adaptation, and then bring them into Climate-ADAPT.
Okay, thank you, Emiliano. I think you addressed some of these questions. There are many questions, but I select a set of them for you, Spyridoula. The participants want to know a bit more your views on the role of the LIFE program in general to promote, to create, to testing these adaptation options. If you foresee a relevant role for the LIFE to strengthen this component in Climate-ADAPT. Also, they want to know your views and your experience in regarding the opportunities and the challenge when implementing these adaptation options, taking into account the different governance levels you have to take into consideration for a successful of this experience, and then if the funds of this if the funds available for this project is a limited factor or the other way around. You have designed your adaptation options and your projects, and then you look for funds. So what is the relation between this? Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the questions. With respect to the role of the LIFE program, yes, there is a climate change adaptation area, and there you can apply. I think that it's quite, I mean, there is an annual priority, there are annual priorities each year, and I know that for this year, as well as for the previous years, the Covenant of Mayors initiatives and things that have to do, that are linked to the municipalities are usually getting a very positive feedback, so you could try it and you could use it for the next programming period. Of course, there will be some changes because in the climate action there will be 2 different sub-programs. But for this year, for sure, you can apply on climate change adaptation related projects. You also mentioned testing. Well, I think that the LIFE program is more or less testing the water. So you need to have some innovative aspects in order to apply for LIFE. And I think this is good to keep it in mind and to always have it in the background. Now, yes, it is quite tricky when you're trying to make these projects and when you're trying to combine and to bring together different stakeholders. The way I have seen it, for instance, for the first case that I was mentioning, we need to have a good collaboration between the region and between the municipality and between the administration of the park. So having the Ministry of the Environment there, having also the Green Fund that is in good relationship with those actors, it helps us and it facilitates this communication. And what we're trying to do is really bring different actors together and take into account what they are planning and what they have to say. Now, with respect to the funds, actually, yes, it is in a way a limiting factor because in LIFE you need to have your own contribution. We, as the Green Fund, we are supporting the municipalities and the region that participate, and we provide part of their own contribution. But in order to be fair, we put, a limit for each municipality that would participate. There were cases where the municipality had in their program had some money that they could also use for the project, and in this case, like in the case of Caterini, they could go for more, so they could try a combination of measures. In other cases, and after talking to the municipalities, it is clear that usually they have a wider vision, and then they have 2 or 3 projects that they're trying to combine them all together in an integrated solution. And the structural funds are also quite synergistic to this. So, for instance, in LARISA, they are also participating in a Horizon project. They have some programming arrangements with the technical chamber, so they get different bits and pieces and they put them together in an integrated way.
Thank you very much, Spyridoula, for your answer. I know live integrated projects are very demanded in effort to coordinate, and they are very difficult to formulate, and then there are few integrated projects in Europe on adaptation to climate change. Let's have some time, some more minutes, because there is a lot of interesting questions before closing the webinar. There are many questions from countries outside EU and Europe, I would say, asking if they can provide information to Climate-ADAPT. There are questions from Egypt, from Middle East countries, from Gulf countries, from Georgia. So maybe now you can comment a bit, Emiliano, on our criteria to with this regard. Also, there are some comments regarding the topic of the natural-based solutions. We have a specific web page in Climate-ADAPT addressing ecosystem-based approaches, and here natural-based solutions are included. And adaptation options are, of course, including some of the adaptation options are including natural-based solution. Maybe, Emiliano, you can also comment on the report in progress on this topic that you are coordinating on the agency. And finally, there is some questions also on the interconnections of platforms, and here I have to say that the agency, the European Environment Agency, one of the priorities we have is to progress in this field of interconnection platforms. We have developed some pilots projects with some national platform and with some European platform, the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center. But of course, we know there is a task force in progress to discuss how to interconnect platforms, specifically those who are focused on natural-based solutions. So with this, Emiliano, maybe you can provide some briefing, and maybe then we have to close the webinar.
Sure. I think adaptation options, typology of items, including the Climate-ADAPT, is a perfect example of items which can really benefit from contribution from every kind of countries, even outside Europe. I mean, the general rule in Climate-ADAPT is that we privilege to include information which are referring to European experiences. But as I said at the beginning, adaptation options are representing potential measures in action that can be implemented to solve a problem of climate change adaptation, or to improve climate change adaptation and reduce vulnerability, which means that they are not specifically pointing to information located in a place, are description which are general enough that can be, generalized to any kind of context of application. So you're very welcome if you have experience of measures which are not well represented or not totally represented in Climate-ADAPT, to provide the information of typologies of measures which are even coming from other European countries and experience. And indeed, when we've been developing adaptation options description, we have referred to literature which is also not European natures, or to projects which are non-European projects as well. In terms of natural-based solutions, you said already correctly that there are a number of adaptation options which can be labeled ecosystem-based adaptation options, and for extension also, therefore including some natural-based solutions. This year, the European Topic Center on Climate Change Adaptation, together with the European Environmental Agency, is working on developing a report that should come out early next year on ecosystem-based adaptation and the so-called eco-DRR, eco-disaster risk reduction, which is definitely very much focusing on presenting the status of advancement of scientific research and knowledge of nature-based solutions. What's the connection with Climate-ADAPT? When this report will be finalized, it will surely come out that there are a number of measures which are not considered in Climate-ADAPT yet. So there will be a transfer from the report into Climate-ADAPT of new measure, in this case, really focusing on nature-based solutions. The same happened last year, actually, when the EA developed two reports, one on adaptation in the agriculture sector and another one on the energy sector. And from those reports, there was clearly a transfer of knowledge from the reports to the Climate-ADAPT in terms of adaptation options, not only even in terms of case studies, for example.
Okay, thank you very much, Emiliano. I think we are out of time. I would like to thank all participants for your participation and for your feedback. We have collected a lot of questions and feedback that will help us to further develop Climate-ADAPT. Those questions that have been not answered here, we will try to directly answer you by email in coming days. And yeah, that's my final remarks. Silvia, Medri, you want to close the webinar from your side, from CMCC?
Thanks a lot, José Ramon. I also would like to thank very much our audience for their interest and huge participation this time. We were around 400 participants, and I'd like just to remind that we are having regular such kind of webinars, and we very much appreciate your input and also ideas for that. So we are all available to collect your views also about what you would like to hear from us, considering then the work of the EA and of the ETCCCA is continuous developing, so there is always new knowledge available, and that you might be interested in. So just thank you very much, and let's keep in touch.